United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, if I could ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Councilman Gary Donovan.
Councilman Gary Donovan, Council at Large, present.
Councilwoman Colleen O'Connor.
Councilwoman Colleen O'Connor, Council at Large, here.
Councilwoman Bridget Hosky.
Councilwoman Bridget Hosky, 1st District, present.
Councilman William X. Conlon.
Councilman William X. Conlon, 2nd District, present.
Councilwoman Elizabeth Johnston.
Councilwoman Liz Johnston, 3rd District, present.
Councilman Mitchell Galagnano.
Councilman Mitchell Galagnano, 4th District, present.
Councilwoman Robin Hamilton.
Councilwoman Robin Hamilton, 5th District, present.
Councilman Peter Massaro.
Councilman Peter Massaro, 6th District, present.
Councilwoman Trenae McGee.
Councilwoman Trenae McGee, 7th District, present.
Councilwoman Crystal Finelli.
Councilwoman Crystal Finelli, 8th District, present.
Councilman Robert Bruno.
Councilman Robert Bruno, 9th District, present.
Councilman Barry Lee Cohen.
Councilman Barry Lee Cohen, 10th District, present.
And Chairman Ron Quagliani.
Councilman Quagliani, Council at Large, present. Thank you, Stacy. Before we go into public comment, I would just like to take a minute, if we could have a moment of silence for Stella Cretella. Stella passed away this past week. If anybody knew Stella, you know that she was full of energy, involved in many things, very, very civic oriented, served on the West Haven Board of Education, served on the West Haven Republican Town Committee, the West Haven Housing Authority, and the Board of Finance. And she was an untiring advocate for NAMI and those that are dealing with mental illness. She was an advocate for many, many years. So if we could just take a moment to remember Stella. Thank you. Okay, we'll enter into public comment. Stacy, do we have any public comment this evening?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we do have one letter, and I will read it. It says, "Hello, City Council members and Mayor Rossi. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm a business owner, property owner, and resident here in our great city of West Haven. I relocated my catering business about 7 years ago to 224 Campbell Avenue in West Haven. Prior to that, we were located in New Haven for 15 years. My wife and I and our 3 children live at 493 Ocean Avenue. My children attend public school. During the day, I am the primary caregiver and distance learning specialist. First, thank you for doing your best to pull the city together during our tumultuous times of COVID-19. I'm quite sure that the challenges that have occurred have been first for a lot of people, and as a result, we have been forced to do things entirely different than we would otherwise would have. As a business owner and father, this has been the overarching theme for me. Quite often, I am called out at the last minute to be at home with my children during distance learning and have to juggle their and my personal workload. Secondly, the main focus of my letter is a request for transparency and guidance. While I have numerous questions, concerns that I will address on a future date, and most specifically and most urgently, has our Economic Development Commission not been meeting during this time period? Does this not seem like the ideal time to schedule extra meetings so that we can pull our business owners together and emerge successfully from the pandemic? We can determine what the best course of action is together as a team. Has the City Council offered guidance to the business owners? After all, Mayor Rossi has said the city residents are overburdened with taxes, and one of the keys to relieving the tax burden is to bring economic development to West Haven. I have scanned through the city's website and I cannot find a simple course of action for guidance for a business owner anywhere. Perhaps maybe I am off base with what I am looking for as guidance that I believe that municipal government should offer. Or perhaps maybe I'm just naive that I cannot find the actual information that's there. So that said, if the meetings occurred and decisions were made, where are the agendas and where are the minutes? There's only agendas listed on the city's website. Please update the website accordingly. Additionally, if no meetings were scheduled and the website does accurately reflect the lack of attention to business owners, what is being done as a whole to offer guidance to programs that are available on a state, national, or local level to local businesses? What, if anything, is being done to contract business owners to develop a blueprint for future success in West Haven? What, if anything, is the overall plan to emerge from the pandemic successfully? Finally, thank you for taking the time to read the letter. I greatly appreciate your attention to this matter. Eric A. Rogers, President, Sweet Relief, Inc. And that's the only letter we have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Stacy. We'll now enter into the regular council meeting. First order of business is the approval of the minutes of the January 25th meeting. Is there a motion to approve? Councilwoman Finelli, Councilwoman O'Connor, is there a second? Councilwoman Johnson, Councilman Massaro. Is there any discussion on those minutes? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Is there anyone opposed? Are there any abstentions? And the minutes carry unanimously. Stacy, if I could ask you to read tonight's communications into the record, please.
Sure, we have before us tonight Communication A from City Auditors regarding the City of West Haven's audit presentation and financial statements for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2020. And that concludes our communications for this evening, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Stacy. We will recess into committee meetings. The first committee to be heard from is the Finance Committee, Councilwoman Hosky.
Mr. Chairman, Quagliani. Before us, we have the city auditors regarding the city's audit from Bloom Shapiro, possibly. It might have a different name. We have Dan Smith, Leslie Zoll, and David Flint, who are going to go over everything for us. Who's going to start? You can take it away.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to try and share my screen here. Let me know if you guys, when you can see it.
It's up.
Okay, great. And everyone can hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. So good evening, and thank you for having us here tonight. My name is Leslie Zoll, and I was the partner on the city audit for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2020. And we are from Bloom Shapiro. However, my slide deck does say CLA, and I'm going to explain why we have a name change later in our presentation. So that's not a typo. And I just want to, as far as an agenda goes tonight, I just want to talk about the scope of our engagement so you all understand what our scope is. I'm going to give you a high-level audit results, and then I'm going to have David Flint, who was the manager on the job, give you some financial highlights. Dan Smith is going to talk about the single audits and our management letter recommendations, as well as some of our required communications to the council. And then I will conclude with just sharing with you some upcoming GASBs that you should be aware of, and then finally close with our merger with CLA. You can stop me at any time and ask any questions that you want, or you can wait until the end.
We're gonna wait until the end, thank you.
Sure. So in terms of the scope of our engagements, management's responsible for creating the financial statements in accordance with GAAP. We come in to opine on those statements. We express opinions on whether those basic financial statements are presented in accordance with GAAP. We also express an in relation to opinion on the state and federal schedules of assistance. And we also express opinion on compliance with laws and regulations in accordance with those major programs that we test on the state and federal side. We do not opine on internal controls. We gain an understanding of those internal controls to perform our audit. But if something came to our attention, whether it be a significant deficiency or a material weakness, we would be required to communicate those to you. So we do provide you with a report on internal control over the financial statements as a whole, as well as internal controls related to the major programs that we test on the state and federal scale. So in terms of our audit results for the city, you did receive an unmodified opinion on the financial statements. This is something that you would want to receive each and every year. We did note a material weakness identified in internal controls over financial reporting, and this had to do with recording things within the correct fiscal year. There were some invoices that were posted to fiscal year 21 that should have been posted to fiscal year 20. And so because of the size of that adjustment, we did have a requirement to report that as a material weakness. On the federal single audit side, you did receive an unmodified opinion on the major programs that we tested. There was no compliance findings to report, but we did report one significant deficiency in internal control, and that's regarding the procurement standard under uniform guidance. And Dan's going to be talking to that more in detail when we get to that section. On the state single audit, again, an unmodified opinion. That's a clean opinion on compliance for the major state programs that we tested. There was one compliance finding regarding subrecipient monitoring for the child daycare program, but no significant deficiencies in internal control. I'm going to turn it over to Dave.
Good evening, everybody. I'm just going to go over some of the financial highlights for the city for fiscal year 2020. On the first slide here, we have a summary of the governmental activities of the city, and basically this is a snapshot of Exhibit 1, which is page 13 of the city's financial statements. It's basically all the city's activity rolled up together, excluding the fiduciary funds on a full accrual basis of accounting. Now, the city had current assets of $42.8 million, capital assets net of accumulated depreciation of $277.3 million. It also had deferred outflows of resources, which primarily relate to pension and OPEB of $126 million, current liabilities of $55 million, long-term liabilities of $496 million, which is primarily long-term debt, which is on page 39 of the city's financial statement if you want to see long-term debt broken out by category. We then have deferred inflows of resources, which again primarily relate to pension and OPEB, as well as some advanced tax collections of $26.8 million. And that brings us down to a total net position deficit of $131.9 million. And that's made up of our net investment in capital assets, which is basically your capital assets less the debt that was issued to purchase those capital assets. We have restricted net position of $9.3 million, which is restricted funds for the Allentown Fire District, SOAR operations, as well as housing rehabilitation. And that brings us to a total unrestricted net position of $300.7 million. And again, that's a deficit. Next slide, Leslie. So this, again, is a snapshot of Exhibit 3 from the city's financial statements. Exhibit 3 can be found on page 15, and it basically outlines the city's 4 major funds as well as all the non-major funds aggregated in that last column there. The first major fund is the city's general fund, which had a fund balance of $3.6 million at the end of the year, which represents a $2.2 million increase over the prior year. The next major fund is the Allentown Fire Department Fund, which had a fund balance of $2 million, which again had an increase of $766,000 over the prior year. The Capital Improvement Fund is running at a deficit of $37.9 million and did experience an increase to that deficit of $12.1 million over the prior year, and this was primarily due to the ongoing high school renovation project. The final major fund here is the Sewer Fund, which had a fund balance of $4.9 million, which was an increase of $1.7 million over the prior year. And now we have the aggregate remaining funds, which had a fund balance of $3.9 million, which again experienced an increase of $642,000 over the prior year. Now, if you want to see all those non-major funds listed out, you can do so on Exhibits C1 and C2, which can be found starting on page 86 of the city's financial statements. So slide 10 here is a summary of the city's proprietary funds, which is made up of 3 internal service funds: the city's medical fund, the general liability fund, and the workers' compensation fund. Now, each of these funds was in a deficit position throughout the year. However, the medical fund was able to decrease that deficit by $619,000, and the general liability was able to decrease their deficit by $58,000. On the flip side, the workers' compensation fund did increase their deficit by $150,000. You can see exhibits D1 and D2 in the city's financial statements for more detail on these 3 funds, and that starts on page 9. Slide 11 here is our fiduciary funds, which is basically your pension funds and your custodial funds. The city only has one custodial fund, and that is your student activities fund, which had $405,000 for the year. The city has 2 pension funds, the police pension plan as well as the Allentown Fire Department plan. Detailed information about both these plans can be found on page 55 and 56 of the city's financial statements if you want further information. But the police plan saw a decrease in net position of $6 million in 2020. And on the flip side, the Allentown plan actually saw an increase to the net position of $1.1 million. If we go to the next slide, we have a few more facts about the pension plans. Net pension liability for the police plan was $28.9 million, and that plan itself was 80% funded. The Allentown pension plan had a net pension liability of $23.4 million and was 28.2% funded. In addition to the net pension liabilities, the city also has a total OPEB liability of $308.1 million. Another interesting fact here, we have the property tax collection rates for both the city and the Allentown Fire District, and you can see that the 2020 versus the 2019 collection rates are pretty comparative.
So for the federal single audit, total federal awards expended were approximately $8.1 million. The major programs we tested were the child nutrition cluster, which includes National School Lunch Program and School Breakfast Program, and the special education cluster, which is the IDEA grants. We reported an unmodified opinion on major program compliance, and we noted a significant deficiency in internal control over compliance regarding procurement standards under the uniform guidance. And this is item 2020-002 in the federal single audit report. And this was due to new guidance under uniform guidance for municipalities' procurement standards. For the state single audit, total state awards expended were $89.1 million. The major programs tested were the Alliance District, clean water revenue bonds, payment in lieu of taxes on private college and hospitals, and child daycare. We reported an unmodified opinion on major program compliance, with one compliance finding on subrecipient monitoring for the child daycare grant. And this is item 2020-002 in the
Can't hear you anymore. Can anyone else hear Dan Smith?
No.
Okay.
No.
Dan, we can't hear you. Leslie, can you let Dan know that we can't hear him?
Yep, I can, and I'll take over for him.
Thank you. Oh, Teams. We use that at my job.
All right, let me continue for him since he's having technical trouble right now. So I'm going to move on to the state single audit.
Thank you. This is where we lost him.
Yeah, so just the last bullet point, Leslie, is really where we lost him.
Oh, okay. So he was saying there was no internal control findings on compliance. There was just the one compliance finding on subrecipient monitoring. So then each year we do have communication that we need to disclose to you guys. It's written in one of the deliverable letters that you hopefully have received from Nancy. So I just want to highlight some of those required communications. First off, there's no standards that were adopted this year due to the GASB postponing any of the new standards due to COVID, so we were thankful about that. So there was no new standards adopted within the financial statements. In terms of significant estimates, obviously in the financial statements there usually is estimates based on certain things, so I just want to list those out for you tonight. One of those is capital assets. So depending on the useful lives and your policy on capital assets related to those useful lives, that will definitely determine the depreciation expense and then ultimately the net value of your assets. So that is certainly a significant estimate in your financial statements. Allowance for uncollectible receivables is based on historical history there. Net pension and total OPEB liability, those two estimates are based on actuarial assumptions, which are all listed out in your financial statement notes if you'd like to check those. Claims and judgments obviously is a significant estimate based on either legal claims from your common counsel or any of your insurance brokers that administrate your plans. And then investments measured at fair market value obviously would fluctuate based on the value of those within your financial advisors. We did not experience any disagreements with management. Management did not consult with other accountants. There was no difficulties encountered in performing the audit, no uncorrected misstatements, and no independence issues. Dave, you want to take this section? If Dan still can't, we can't still hear Dan.
Sure. You guys just give me a second here to open up the management letter. So hopefully at this point you guys have all had the opportunity to read through the management letter. The biggest item we found, which was the material weakness that Leslie noted earlier, was surrounding accounts payable. We did note one large invoice related to the high school construction project. The invoice had come in after year end, but covered construction work that was performed before year end. So we did accrue that invoice back to 2020, and due to the size of the invoice, that was the reason for its classification as a material weakness.
The other items, well, just, Dave, just to interrupt you for a second, the rest of these recommendations did not rise to the level of a material weakness or significant deficiency, but when we go through the audit, we always like to just share best practices, share some things that could be improved in your internal control structure, and so the rest of these that Dave's going to go over are really just improvements to controls. So they're, just crossing your T's, dotting your I's type of things that could be improved moving forward.
Great points, Leslie. Thank you. So for cash controls, we just believe that there could be strengthening among the controls that are currently in place surrounding cash received and depositing of that cash. Although we noted that bank recs would catch any material omissions in performing the review of these receipt batches, we noted instances where there are no approval signatures. So, one thing that we're always looking for is that when controls and processes are performed, we like to see that there's sign off, kind of just giving us a check that the control was performed both by, it shows us who it was performed by and also when it was performed, so we can look at verifying that these controls are being performed timely. The other thing here is shipping receipts. We found that controls in place did not verify proper receipt of goods or services ordered. So we recommend that the city make use of shipping receipts to confirm that receipts are goods and to alert finance department that it is okay to pay invoices as they come in. For bank reconciliations, we noted that there is no formal process to review bank reconciliations. For bank reconciliations, we like to see one step or one level of review beyond the person that is preparing the bank reconciliations. And in our testing, we did notice instances that did not have a proper sign-off indicating that bank reconciliation had been reviewed. Similar type of finding here related timesheets. Some of the timesheets that we were testing, we noted that the timesheet did not have proper evidence of approval by either their supervisor or department head. So we're just looking for a signature on the timesheet, leaving evidence that the employee's supervisor is approving their time. Moving down to the approved vendor list. We noted in our audit procedures that the city allows for purchases without first adding vendors to an approved vendor list. We always recommend that any new vendors be added to an approved vendor list. This kind of weeds out any conflicts of interest or stuff like that. And this was something that was discussed with management and will be followed going forward. So for pension and OPEB benefit payments, we noted one employee at the Allentown Fire District that had been receiving a benefit payment that was in excess of what they should have been receiving. This was actually, an employee was receiving $1,000 additional. Sorry guys, my 3-year-old just walked in. Brooks, can you just give me 1 second? I'm in a meeting here. Okay.
But I didn't.
I'm so sorry, guys.
I said I got a date out of the basement, but I didn't listen to
Okay.
her.
Thanks,
And
buddy.
her won't play with me.
Can you go in the other room? Your mom's in big trouble.
Her won't never want Make fun of the game.
Sorry, guys.
Come away from me.
So I just want to make sure I cover this topic sufficiently. So just to reiterate, our review of pension and OPEB benefit payments, we noted one pensioner from the Allentown Fire Department pension plan. So they were receiving an additional $1,000 per month to their pension payout. It was exactly $1,000. So it looked like it could have been a typo, and this person had been receiving benefits since 1988. So we did recommend that the city do further testing to try to identify the extent of this problem, whether it's, relates solely to this person or if it's a problem that's, more widespread than this.
And we have talked to management, and they are working on getting some more detail on that and making sure that that's corrected. So I'm just going to end the presentation by just letting you know some of the new GASBs that are coming down the pike that the city should be aware of. In 2021, there's not too many that the city needs to be concerned about. Statement 84 and fiduciary activities was actually early implemented by your previous auditors. So that's all set now. And the other two GASBs for next year are just clarifications on older standards. So I think for the most part, the city of West Haven is good for next year. However, moving into 2022, GASB 87 is a significant GASB that the city should really start to prepare for and be ready for. I know this is the first year that the city has been able to issue financial statements on time, which is fabulous, and you're going to want to continue that. So being ahead of the curve and making sure you're prepared for this GASB 87 come 2022, you'd need to start that sooner rather than later. And what we recommend that the city do on this GASB 87 is to start preparing an inventory of all of their leases, and that's on the leasee side as well as the leaseor side. So if you rent land or anything of that nature, that also is under this standard. And so definitely an inventory should be done as soon as possible so you can gather all that information, be ready to analyze those agreements as well as develop a plan to make sure that they're valued appropriately when you're ready for the standard that's applicable starting July 1st, 2021. The other standards are not too much of a lift here. They're just some, again, clarifications on common practice within the industry in certain transactions. Definitely in 2023, these are specific transactions that if West Haven doesn't have any of these transactions, it wouldn't apply to them. So in the next 3 years, it's really GASB 87 that the city should be concerned with. And then I just wanted to spend just a couple minutes before I have any questions to answer for you guys, is that Bloom Shapiro is now part of CLA as of 1/1. So all of us are moving forward as CLA employees as of 1/1. We do believe that their culture and their values are the same as Bloom Shapiro's, and we will be heading their Northeast practice. So since all of us have moved into CLA, the city will see all of the same faces, the same team, the fee structure, everything in as far as the contract goes will be the same. We will just be under a different name. CLA is a national firm that has a very strong state and local presence within the country. They serve 3,500 government clients all across the country. So we really feel that we're going to be able to bring that breadth of knowledge and resources to all of our municipalities here in the Northeast, and we're really excited about bringing that to our clients. And with that, I'm open to any questions that you guys have.
Leslie and Dave. Before we get to the questions, I just wanted to give Mayor Rossi a moment if she wanted to say anything, had a statement. I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot, so you don't have to, Mayor Rossi, but in the event that you wanted to, I just wanted to give you that opportunity.
Thank you, Finance Chair Hosky. Yes, the only thing, of course, I'm going to reiterate, very pleased that this audit is on time. Extremely pleased with all the work that was done by the Finance Department and many other individuals in City Hall working with Boone Shapiro to get this done on time. And all of you, you know, it was tough. There were days we didn't think we were going to make it, but we did. So I think that's very, very important. And the one item that they were talking about with the one pensioner that did get paid more for several years. We do want to take a look at doing either a larger sampling, and I have been in contact with Boone Shapiro about this, and to see if there was anyone else, because you find that a lot of times it just may be the one, but until you do a larger sampling to find out, we're not sure, and we don't want to just leave it now unchecked now that it's been brought to our attention. But that's pretty much it. Everything else, so I'll let everybody ask their questions now.
Thank you, Mayor Rossi. I too want to reiterate how excited we are. It is the first time since I've been on the council that an audit has come in on time, and it's impressive. We know, I know it's your first year working with West Haven, so we do appreciate all the work that your team has put into making that happen. I am gonna open it up to the City Council to ask a couple their questions, and if you do have multiple questions, I just ask you to hold it to 2 so that we can get everybody else in, and then we will come back around and follow up with you. Actually, I did want to say that I have a question.
Okay.
While I'm thinking about it, I love best practices. I you know, the most exciting thing that I think about the whole audit was the idea of you know, sharing best practices. But I was curious about the timesheets. I thought timesheets, when you said that some weren't signed off on by management, did you mean like an actual sign off, like not like a physical on a piece of paper, but maybe like through the computer that management or somebody looked over the timesheet? I was just kind of curious about that, because I wasn't when I think of sign, I just wanted to make sure it wasn't like a physical signature on a timesheet, or it could be. That's my question. What exactly, when you said the timesheet wasn't signed off, what was meant by that?
I'm gonna let Dan or Dave answer that. Dan, can you hear us now?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Welcome back.
See how long this lasts. So we found 2 instances in our internal control walkthrough procedures that just didn't have any evidence of approval by the manager. So there was no signature, or, you know, just we're looking for some sort of audit trail to find that it was looked at, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a true signature.
Got it. And I have one more question. When you were talking about our tax collection rate, and I know that you're the auditor, so maybe you don't know, but I'm thinking that you work with other municipalities, so you might have an opinion. Our rate is comparative to like last year. I think it's like a point off between what happened last year and what we're getting this year. Have you found that to be the case with other municipalities during COVID and the pandemic? Or can you speak to that? You know,
Sure. Okay, so for the most part, COVID has not yet, for 6/30/2020, impacted the tax collection rate. And that's basically because, right, the pandemic started in March, right? And the timing of when collections need to be made, right, are usually July and January. So across the board and across the state, we haven't seen a decline yet in the collection rate. We don't know what's going to happen in 2021. We're expecting and assuming that that will dip, and that will also probably depend on the mix of your taxpayers, right, and where you are in the state in terms of the pandemic. But right now, we have not seen a dip in collection rates.
Great. Okay, no, I appreciate that. I was curious just overall. I'm going to stop talking. Does anyone else have any questions besides me? Councilman Massaro?
Good evening. I listened to your report and everything, and like I said, I commend you for getting this audit on time, first time in a long time. I have one question. I can't understand how a pension's been audited many times. All the years that I've been in that department for 42 years, by Milliman and other auditors, and they never found anybody getting paid more than they should in their pension. So I would like to find out who's getting overpaid and when it started, because I've been there, and I also was in charge of that department at the house for quite a while, and I don't recall anybody getting more than they should. Secondly, I do remember that we were sued by one of the firefighters that didn't get a raise for 4 years like he was supposed to, and that's the only time we had to pay more money to an individual, which I think he did retire back in 1988. So I would like an explanation on this, and I also asked Frank to find out about this 2 weeks ago so we could get the answers for this for a while ago, and we still don't find anybody in our records. Please explain that to me.
Well, we obviously can't speak for the city's prior auditors. As you know, this was our first year auditing the city, and obviously we found the issue. The difference was exactly $1,000, which tells me that it probably was a typo somewhere along the lines. But without further investigation, we won't really know for sure. Your city's actuary, Milliman, it's not necessarily something that they would calculate. So the city gives Milliman a file every year. It's called, or every valuation, it's called the census file. We review that to see how much people should be getting paid, and then we compare that to what they're actually getting paid. And in this instance, the census file, for example purposes, the census file that was sent to Milliman said that this individual should be receiving $3,000 a month, and then we look at what they're actually receiving out of payroll, and it was $4,000. So that's the issue. So, first we recommend we'd have to go back to this person's payroll records and recalculate what their pension payment should actually be to see if it is the $3,000 or the $4,000. And then we got to figure out how long it's been going on and what the total impact to the city would be.
So I'm going to defer that to Frank and Nancy in terms of following up on that.
I understand that, but Milliman has been with us for a long time before we went with the city. We were taken over by the city in 2012, and we had that pension audited many times, but nobody ever found that. That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, Peter, I don't know what type of audits that you had, if Milliman actually was doing an audit of all of your participants, but for us, it's more of, whatever sample we picked and what we looked at. So, that's pretty random, unfortunately, how we do our sample audits in the past. I can't really speak of, but if it's part of the financial statement audit, I know we don't do 100% of samples in terms of the scope of our financial audits.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Massaro. Are there any other questions? Councilwoman Johnston?
I have a few questions, but I'll just stick to the two that are related to this topic since we're already on it. So just for clarity's sake, are you saying that an extra $1,000 a month, for the last 32 years? That's how,
Yeah, it could potentially be upwards of $400,000.
right, okay. That was my quick math. And
But
then,
again, we didn't go back 33 years. That's just when this person started receiving payments.
Gotcha. Okay, gotcha.
So, yeah, Nancy and Frank will have to go back and actually assess what the misrepresentation was.
And then my other question is about this is just ignorance on my part, not being a budget person. On page 5, you were talking about the Allentown Fire Department having positive operations resulting in fund balance of yada yada due to increased revenues. Is there revenue just from taxes? Is that what that refers to?
I believe that is the case. It's off the top of my head. So if we go to, if you go to Exhibit 4, which is page
17 of the financial statement.
17 of financial statements, you'll see the Allentown Fire Department is the second fund listed there. And you'll see it does have other categories of revenue, but you'll see that property taxes makes up the large portion.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure.
Are there any other questions? No other questions? Chairman Quagliani?
Thank you, Councilwoman Hosky. I think my question is for Frank and or the mayor. So, you know, the three findings that were identified: the year-end cutoff procedures, the procurement standard, and the subrecipient monitoring. If I remember correctly, I think you produced kind of a red, yellow, green graph as you develop processes to either shore up these procedures and make sure they don't happen again. I just want to see if that's the case.
Yeah, we will definitely prepare a similar grid that we did in the past year, Mr. Chairman, and we will, monitor what is being done to correct these items. For the year-end cutoff, as Leslie had mentioned, well, maybe it was Dave, it was primarily one of the payments. It was a $2 million payment to Gilbane for the building project. It just got charged to the wrong year. Has no impact on the capital, on the general fund, but still a procedure was, it should have been caught. That was my fault. I, in fact, processed it and put it to the wrong year. So I know for myself, we'll go through and make sure that closed process is tightened up.
And Frank, the timesheets will kind of work itself out with your new payroll implementation, correct?
That's correct. Once ADP goes live, all departments will have electronic sign-offs by management.
Okay. And listen, I want to note the audit on time, which is probably over a decade. I think it probably could be longer, but I appreciate that, and also I appreciate the fact that there are no carryover findings. So I've seen many audits where the finding from the year before is the finding for the current year because we never did anything to address that. We meaning the city years back. And I'm happy to see that there are no carryover.
that information that's in the notes actually is from RSI 2,
Page 71.
71 and 72.
Okay. And so, thank you.
So it breaks it down by line item for you.
So would it also tell me what the city council was over for?
It won't give you specifics. Basically, it's every budgeted line item for the budget, for the general fund, and you know, whether and what their variance was to budget compared to actual.
But I'm sure Frank can give you more detail if it's not listed in RSI 2.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Is that all, Councilwoman Johnston? So I have another question. So you guys are brand new, and I'm just kind of excited about it, especially since you did so well. So I have nothing but praise for you. You would have gotten that other Councilwoman Hosky had this come in late. I don't know if you heard the stories, but no, I'm joking.
No,
I'm not joking. It's true. So I'm just curious that, you know, we are apparently doing far better, right? You guys are doing better than most auditors that came in your first time out of the gate. So next year we're expecting it like 3 weeks early. So my question is that, you know, we talk about best practices, and, you know, you guys have an opinion and you have the experience. What percentage do you see when you think a municipality is doing well in regards to their general fund? So our sewer fund right now, and I know, you know, you can't, I'm not asking you for your financial, I'm just saying in your experience, based on all the audits that you have done, our sewer fund, we're at, I think it's like 50% of what the budget is in regards to their fund balance. Where are the cities that are doing well at? Like, what is their percent? Like, I know what Frank says, and I know what the Marge says, but what does CLA say? Where do you think we should be at? What percent?
So we don't necessarily put a percentage on that to say whether a municipality is well or not well. I mean, you can always look to your report in terms of material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal controls. You know, definitely those findings are something that should be looked at as a council to determine whether or not the finance office is working well. In terms of fund balance for the general fund, I mean, I would say that your bond rating agencies look to anywhere from like 15 to 20% of percentage of budgeted expenditures, right? So if you're within that range in the general fund, that's usually what's measured in terms of that. But to label it, you know, municipalities that are doing well, there's too many factors than just that.
And what
answered your question.
What are your thoughts about the OPEB? So you did. No, and I respect that. I mean, I was just curious if, because, you know, you do give those end statements if, you know, I was just curious. I didn't think you could necessarily answer it, but just wondering what you thought. I do have another question in regards to the OPEB. You guys mentioned it a few times. Last year, or this year, we started a trust fund of $50,000. Can you hear me? I'm getting a lot of background speed. Yeah, I think we're having some
People
problems.
just need to mute, yeah.
Are people not muted? Okay. I forgot what I was saying. The OPEB, that's what I was saying. So you brought it up a couple of times, and I was just curious, have you seen what other cities might be doing in regards to reducing their OPEB liability? Did you give any recommendations to them that, not that you didn't give to us, that you didn't, it just might not have come up, but I just wanted to ask, like, do you have any suggestions on how we might be able to do that better? Because it is such a big thing.
Sure. So depending on your ability to set aside funds, right, for this OPEB liability, which you may not in the city, but we would obviously suggest that you set up a trust fund and start funding that. Right now you're pay-as-you-go, so your total liability is on your balance sheet, right?
Well, we do have a trust fund of 50,000.
Okay. So long-term, right, you'd want to build up those investments and start investing and getting some market gains on that. In terms of your OPEB, the other way to limit your exposure on the liability is to look at your union contracts and what you're offering your retirees. And obviously that's not going to be a one-stop shop, right? You're going to need to that's a long-term type of strategy where you're moving people in, as those union contracts get negotiated.
No, I appreciate that, because I'm just saying you've gone into multiple municipalities. There might be things that you've come across that, the city could benefit from. Any tidbits or tips?
I mean, it's definitely investing. It's investing in OPEB funding, and taking a real look at maximizing the market to maximize those gains for future payments.
No, I thank you so much. And I'm thinking that is the end to the questions. So I want to thank you and your team again for coming tonight and presenting to us. We really do appreciate it. And I guess we will see you next year. Same time, same bat channel.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the time is 8:04 and your committee on finance is closed, Chairman.
Thank you, Councilwoman Hosky. Next committee is the Public Lands Committee. Councilman Donovan.
Thank you, Chairman Quagliani. Communication E from 12521 agenda from Corporate Council in regards to the sale of 45 and 239 Front Avenue. Got the committee members are Mitch Galagnano, Finelli, Conley, O'Connor, and myself acting as chair. We agreed that, I believe, right? Everybody agreed that we were waiting on some information as to how much or what the purpose of that land is going to be, and they gave it to us. So the committee feels that there is no, that we should pass this. And I don't know if the committee has any other questions or anybody on the council.
Councilman Donovan, you need a motion and a second before discussion.
Oh, all right. I need a motion to bring this out favorably.
So moved.
Second. Any opposed? All right, we'll bring this out for discussion. Anybody have any questions on it, concerns? Okay, with that being said, we are closed at 8:06.
I'm sorry, did you call the vote in your committee?
He did not.
All right, we have all in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passed.
Thank you, Councilman Donovan. Unfinished business. Do we have Attorney Tiernan with us this evening?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Attorney Tiernan, glad you're with us this evening. I have on the agenda that you would like to update us regarding the parking study.
Yeah, I know this is
point of interest to the council, you appropriated $25,000 in the budget to do a study. We got 3 studies when we did the first RFP, and they were all over budget. Moreover, COVID has significantly reduced parking revenue for municipalities that were more adept at monetizing that side of their revenue space than the city of West Haven. So it was put on the back burner to some degree, but there seems to be unanimity that we are hopeful of coming out of the COVID crisis. We know that COVID generally will get better with the warmer weather, that more activities can occur in outdoor activities. We have the vaccine going. So we're planning to begin increased monetization of parking no later than May 15th. Although all the changes might not be in place on May 15th, we might expand that as time goes on. Our main focus would still be the waterfront during May to late September, and also the University of New Haven area, and then the Veterans Hospital. I reached out to the National Association of Parking Management Companies, and they were good enough to put me into contact with a bunch of other parking agencies. And what we have in place now is an arrangement with LAS Parking, which we should be able to finalize some contractual obligations, where LAS will present us with a proposal of where they think, and they're in the business, where they think they can best monetize parking for the city, given all our dynamics, knowing that we're looking for, at least for some of the changes to be incurred, that they begin no later than May 15th. And they will fold the $25,000 into the contract if they become the management company, or in lieu of that, they will do a proposal for us. We'll get a parking management company, and that company that we will pay LAS for this proposal that they put together. They've sent me a draft contract that I'm reviewing now. So we should be able to finalize that contract relatively soon. And I think it'll be, good news for everybody. I know that sometimes good ideas come up and people begin, and there's a feeling sometimes that things take longer than they should, or that something never got finished. So I did ask the chairman to report on that, because I know that I don't do it often, but sometimes I like to get ahead of the council, and so that when you were about to ask me maybe in a week or two, hey, what's going on with that parking study, maybe I'm a little ahead of it, and that's a good place to be if that's true. So I know the councilors are always interested in items that they put in the budget and in progress coming. So I thought that was, I think it's positive news. I didn't really think it was going to be effective or timely to put out another proposal and expect that we were going to get a good number. And LAS does have some existing parking figures. We are factoring in the effects of COVID. So I'm pretty confident that we should be able to have a good proposal, and I should be able to report back something along the lines of what that proposal has in probably 30 days.
Thank you, Attorney Tiernan. We look forward to seeing that in the near future. Okay, the council will convene as a whole now for committee reports. The first committee is the Public Lands Committee. Councilman Donovan.
Thank you, Chairman Claudiani. Communication E to the Honorable City of Council of the City of West Haven. Your Committee on Public Lands, to whom was referred the matter of the sale of 245 and 239 Front Avenue, reports that the committee met on the 8th day of February 2021 to consider said matter. It is the unanimous opinion of the committee that the following motion be presented. Resolved, the Council of the City of West Haven hereby approves the sale of 245 and 239 Front Avenue, West Haven, as defined in Communication E to Layden Industries for the agreed price of $450,000 as is. The seller accepts all responsibilities for the site at present condition. The City Council hereby authorizes local council to execute said sale agreement.
Councilman Donovan's brought forward Communication E from the 125-21 agenda from Corporation Council in regards to the sale of 245 and 239 Front Avenue. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Councilman Cohen, Massaro, Galagnano. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? And that motion passes unanimously. All set, Councilman Donovan?
I'm all set. Thank you.
Thank you. Adoption of ordinances previously presented. There are none. Do we have any council liaison reports? Councilwoman O'Connor.
I just wanted to remind everyone about this special meeting on Thursday, so that we can hear the results of the library study. I know everyone's eager to hear what they have to say. That's it. I'm done.
Thank you, Councilwoman O'Connor. Any other council liaison reports? Seeing none, we'll move on to new business. Councilwoman McGee.
Next Tuesday, February 17th at 7 p.m. We will be holding our Community Alliance meeting with special guest speaker and expert, Dr. Lorenzo Boyd. You can find this on Facebook within the Community Alliance page.
Thank you, Councilwoman McGee. Councilwoman Johnston.
Thank you. I just wanted to, just a quick little feel-good story. When I learned that the UNH football players would be moving next door to me, back when it occurred, I was a little bit worried that it would be like frat central. But they have turned out to be the nicest neighbors that we could have ever asked for. And I just wanted to go on public record as saying the last 2 snowstorms we had, those kids shoveled my porch, our sidewalk, helped neighbors shovel without anybody asking them to. They're just the nicest kids. So I wanted to give a shout out to UNH for, I don't know what they're doing with their football players, but they're pretty awesome kids. So.
Great, thanks for sharing that. Any other new business? Councilman Cohen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple of questions for Lee, if he's still on the line. Is Lee still there?
Attorney Tiernan, are you still with us?
I would never abandon Council Cohen. What can I do?
Okay, I don't see you. Just 2 quick questions. You know, I was going through some of our past meetings, and I'm just curious, any progress on the Allentown Library? If I recall, I think it was like $315,000 that we agreed on to further negotiate with I guess the developer or what have you. Are we anywhere on that right now, or are we still in negotiation?
Yeah, so we're talking, I mean, obviously, you know, COVID changed the dynamic of sort of the speed with which you would need to reopen as to what level. But that being said, the library group has met with a contingency of myself and members of your council, Chairman Quagliani, Councilman Hosky, and Councilman Hamilton have been at those meetings.
I don't know if that's what Council Cohen's question is. I think he's asking about the status of the sale of the building, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, thank you. Sorry for that.
I'm sorry. I don't. My semantics. I don't refer to that as the library building, but.
Oh, I apologize. Okay. The Piantano building. I can't pronounce it, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. No, yeah. So, in what we did a sale agreement, and they were, once they have the agreement was placed, they're allowed to do some due diligence. And they did find some remediation that they're going to have to do. That is the Acorn Group. And so there is a choice right now as to whether or not we negotiate with them that cost, whether they'll be seeking to reduce the price in part in exchange for the remediation costs, or, which we both seem to want to do, we are putting together an application for brownfield remediation for a lot of projects in the city.
Sure.
The state only bonded that. Now, normally that would have already been done, but, and I assume again because of COVID, for some reason the state didn't bond in September, not in October, not in November. So we lost about 4 months on that. They finally bonded in December. They're accepting applications. We're putting together our application as we speak. And we're hoping to get some fairly significant brownfield money for a number of projects. And we're able to include the Acorn Group. Now, the benefit, there's obviously benefits to the Acorn Group by that. There's also benefits to the city. It's like found money. Shouldn't delay it much longer. We've been able to take advantage of the University of Haven leasing the space, so the city is getting some rental income as we sit. So nobody's losing any money. If anything, we're actually, the city's probably gaining financially in the short term. But the Acorn Group continues to be a good developer in that section of the city, and they, are very enthusiastic about going forward. They're acquiring other properties in the area in order to have a good project. So we would anticipate, we may close sooner, but I think we are going to hold out if we can get an answer from the state in the next 45 days as to the brownfield money. And again, we're not just applying for brownfield money to them. The bulk of the money we're looking for other locations in the city so we can make them more viable for development.
Yeah, but that's not to interrupt you, Lee, but that's really key, because if we get that brownfield money, if the remediation was $50,000, $100,000, whatever the remediation cost was, we don't want to. Ideally, we wouldn't want to defray it off the $315 that we agreed on. So I think that's a wonderful thing that the city's at least going to bat to try to apply for that. And I have one other question for you, Lee. Different subject, if I may, Mr. Chair, if I may. I sat in on or participated via the Zoom meeting at the town hall meeting last week. I forget what day last week. And I was surprised that the mayor gave a very good overview on a number of issues and questions that came up during the discussions. But she also mentioned that the Savin Rock Conference Center, and I know it's only been about a month since we, was it December 28th or something like that, that we agreed to have the city, try to negotiate with Smyrna Group. And I know it's awful short, but are things looking good? Is there any little snapshot you can give us today, or is it too premature? I know she mentioned it during the town hall, so I just got my curiosity up.
Yeah, what we've done is, one thing we did to make sure that the project keeps on time, because unfortunately, sometimes my time is limited, and that's the kind of project that you want to keep the developer happy, and you want money. Time is money, so you want to keep it going quickly. So what we were lucky enough to do is our former assistant planner, Dave Colleen, who is a city resident, has agreed to consult on that project. He's kind of integral into making sure the project moves forward, because, as you know, there's a fairly significant major conservation easement in the area. So we want to make sure that's adhered to. We want to get the best project we can. He's agreed to help on that, and that should allow me to be involved, but not involved to the extent where it detracts from the other legal projects that are going on in the city. I have met with the developer probably since we met. I've probably met 4 times. He's been in. We've tried to give him access to all our engineering records. We've tried to give him access to all our planning documents. I've agreed to do a title, more formalized title search that would survive title insurance. We're discussing as to whether or not a survey should be done. He's definitely lined up. He's got financing. I've met with some of the independent individuals who are willing, that they think it's a project that deserves that. So it's moving along very well, and we have a whole time list going in to look at the site. He's being very respectful of the museum and what's going to happen with that. And he's also interested and involved in the centennial because the city's history, especially with the Savin Rock Museum being there, could be integral to part of the thematic when he does his development. So he's very. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to back up on one thing for clarity. If I recall the proposal, and if I don't have this rightly, I apologize, but when I asked the question, I believe with the Smyrna Group, they need about $20 million in financing to do both phases. It was initially 15, and I asked them like 20 million. And so, and the reason why I asked the question, Lee, is because if I recall that the agreement that, I'm paraphrasing it, the city and the developer has up to a year to make a deal, if you will. Okay, but I think we all would agree that we should know well before 12 months, because let's face it, the developer is putting in resources and money every step he takes, should it be schematics or studies or what have you, and the city has resources. So I mean, the likelihood of us knowing if a deal can be done, am I being presumptuous to think that we should know if the deal is going to be done in the next couple of months, or does this thing really take a much longer process? Because like you said, time is money, and the more time they spend, the more money that they're spending. So I'm just looking at that symbiotic relationship there. The things look favorable at this point. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think 12 months is a long time where they're at now. The ball is to some degree in our court, because we have to, if he's putting people in place, spend money to get the right project in place, meaning architects, engineers, surveyors, and the like, that's money out of their pocket. So before he does that, he's being smart, he's being a good developer, he's being careful. So for instance, this title search, he wants to know, he wants to make sure if we say the conservation easement allows X, there's no deed restrictions, so on and so forth. So we're going back to do, a title search that could be sustained. You could actually issue a title insurance policy. We're providing him with any other survey documents so that when measurements are made, that those measurements are exact. And the historic document, A, wants to make sure there's nothing that's left to chance, and B, just historically, wanting to know the history of the site, so that as he plans forward, he wants to respect the history of the site. So the title search is in my court right now, which should be done a week or something. But once they have everything, I do think they're going to move relatively fast. They're very anxious. They're pursuing me on that title search fairly aggressively. So, yes, I would anticipate that 12 months is at the outset.
Right.
They'll have some preliminary guides, and I don't think it's not going to be, we get a finalized document. We're going to have discussions before the finalized document, I'm sure, because they're going to want to put forward something that they're not going to want to go in a direction that they don't have fairly good, maybe not unanimous support, but very, very close to unanimous support for whatever they want to do.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I was very pleased when the mayor spoke briefly about the town hall meeting. I said, gee, it's so soon, but no, thank you very much, Lee, on both of those. Thank you. Mr. Chair, one other question for you, if I may. I don't I read an article just this week in the New Haven Register, and it had to do with the New Milford City Council, where there was a woman who was hard of hearing, who was deaf, and she basically pursued the city council because they were doing, I want to say Zoom, I guess it was Zoom meetings, I don't know, doing Zoom meetings where that city council basically was able to do closed captioning. So when people listen to council meetings, just like we're here on WebEx or whatever, I don't know if we enable closed captioning. I believe that WebEx may have that device, and this is just a suggestion. And again, I don't know how doable it is, and maybe Michael would but during these meetings, people have some people have very weak Wi-Fi. There's older people that sometimes, and young people as well, that are harder of hearing. And so it might be something that, if it's easy enough to do, if there's some type of, and I believe there is a WebEx, some type of control that just says enable closed captioning, it might be value added for those people viewing in. Just really a comment, Mr. Chair, for your consideration. And that's all I had this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Cohen. We'll look into that. Is there any other new business? Seeing none, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Councilman Hosky, seconded by Councilman Bruno, Johnson, McGee, Conlon. Everybody have a nice evening. We are adjourned.